how many of you are saltaholics? There's sweet tooths. There's two kinds of people. And now some of you are going to go, you sure not three? Dale, where are you? Yeah. There seem to be sweet tooths, and then there's people who really like the salty snacks kind of as their thing. And salt, what you add to food, it enhances the flavor. It's another purpose of it. It's another thing that they had. In this context, this is probably what Jesus is more specifically speaking about, because he's going to go on and talk about the saltiness. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored?" It's supposed to have taste. It's supposed to be good. And Jesus is telling them, you are the salt of the earth. You are supposed to be salty. It's supposed to impart flavor. It's supposed to be tasty. How does that work in this idea? Well, we're talking about the values that they would see in this, and getting back to that, the different purposes, and then flavor being another added thing. Well, salt was very valuable in the time, and because it was a necessity for the other reasons, and then just as a luxury too for flavor, Roman soldiers were said to be either paid in rations or to be able to buy salt, or they were paid in salt. And thus the phrase, "he is worth his salt," became because the Roman soldiers would end up getting pay, which was called a salarium. The root word is sal, for salt. Salarium, which translates to our salary. You're paid a salary. Comes from the word salarium, which comes from salt, this Roman wage. So you can always look at your salary and your paycheck and wonder if you're worth your salarium, and how good is it? But so there was a value to this salt. And so as Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. Now, if the salt loses its taste, what good is it? What good is it if it loses its taste? It is there to be tasty. People put salt on all kinds of things, food. Watermelon, some of you might be out there who do that. Tomatoes. But when you put the salt onto the food, it's not, nobody ever responds, "Wow, that is some good salt." What is it? No, it makes the actual food better. And so this thing that we have is a value. When we recognize our value of who we are, we also need to recognize what our purpose is and fulfill our calling, that we are to be salty. And so this salt that goes onto this food is to highlight the food. It is to highlight how good that is. It's not to highlight the salt. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You need to be salty. You need to be tasty. But it's not there to glorify you. It's there to highlight Him. We are in the world to highlight Jesus. We are there to be salty so that people enjoy the flavor and the taste of who Christ is. Or, what does salt do? It can make you thirsty. Got the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So what do you got to do? You make them thirsty. You can give them salt, and then they'll drink. We are to be salty. We are to be flavorful. We are to make people thirsty for Christ. There's a calling in that. There's a purpose in that. The reason why Jesus says, you are valuable as salt, but you have a purpose. As John shared, just the scattering of seeds, this ministry, this evangelism, the way to drop stuff out, that we don't know what's going to happen with that. But our job is to be out there in the culture, into the world, making a difference. And part of that is, as we are in the culture, we are to be tasty. We are to make people thirst and get a taste and a glimpse of Christ, to highlight Him. But tragically, we often withdraw from culture, and we turn the culture over to the unrighteous to rule. And it's hard, because we're always navigating, what is our role in the culture? We're not of the world, but we are in the world. And in fact, we are the salt of the earth. We are to be out there having a purpose. But how do we navigate that? If we withdraw too much, what happens? We just let it be. And the unrighteous rule and all the decisions of politics, if there are no believers, nobody in politics, what happens? There's nobody there to help righteous laws be passed, things that will preserve the society. We need to be involved. Schools, if there are no Christians who are in the schools teaching, administration, whatever, what happens? You don't want to send your kids there. It's valuable to be there. If there are no students who are believers, whether it's elementary, high school, college level, post-grad, whatever it is, the influence of students who are salt in their environment. I remember taking a history of Christianity class, not in seminary, but at Texas Tech. And the professor was a Zen Buddhist. So that was an interesting take on history. But in that, he was very fair, and I really appreciated the way he would teach. As he would bring up points, and he really would just kind of toss the grenades out and get discussion going. A couple of our books were not the greatest of books, but it was challenging because there would be stuff I read from one good book, and then I'd read from something else, and then have to think through, knowing going to class there was going to be some discussion and different, I wouldn't say arguments, but debates almost. And the professor was very fair-minded, given who he was, that if there was an opposing point of view, and then I remember shooting up a certain Christian point of view, and he actually appreciated it. And he'd be like, stick to your guns. And thinking, wow, if there's not someone in there, and a friend of mine in college in another class had encouraged me and in being in this class and doing so, and his encouragement of the impact he was making in his classroom because he was being salt in that setting. We are to be in society, politics, classroom, public, whatever station, the media, whatever it is, wherever you work, your office, whatever sphere of influence you have, you are salt. You are to be tasty. You are to make people thirsty for Christ. But we got to do so in a tasty. What happens if salt can be over salty? I won't say it's bad, but there's a way to be about it. It is to highlight Christ. I think the things that are over salty, what does it do? It draws attention to the salt. That is not our purpose. We're not to draw attention to us. We are to highlight Him. And he says, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall the saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. It says, there's a purpose to this, and if the purpose isn't met, if the salt is no good and it's no longer salty, what good is it? If it's lost its saltiness, what do you do with it? Now, there's probably some chemists in the room who want to point out that sodium chloride is a stable compound and doesn't break down. The salt in the day wasn't always a pure salt. If you went to the Dead Sea, it was coming down. There was a lot of other minerals that were in that had come in. And sometimes that salt back in the old world wasn't a pure salt. And so as things got washed out or diluted, that's how sometimes it would lose that saltiness, lose the flavor, because it wasn't a pure Himalayan rock salt or whatever you choose. And so salt could have lost its saltiness. And so what they would do is they would take it then, if it wasn't any good, and just throw it out on the paths. And it would just get trampled on. It would become part of the dirt. Helps keep things from growing there and just get crushed. It's no longer good to eat, no longer good to use on your food. It's lost its saltiness. And so he says, you're to stay salty. If you lose it, what good is it? What good are you? What impact are you having? Mind you, this isn't say that you lose your salvation. This isn't those who lose their saltiness are going to hell. passage. Do not read that into it. Its purpose, its usefulness is gone. We are to stay useful. Be involved. I've been convicted lately. I was playing tennis quite a bit up until a couple years ago, and then schedule and work and stuff kind of took over, and then the longer I got out, I was too much of a perfectionist to not want to get back and be horrible. So I was like, I'll get back into it, but I'll practice, first before I can go back. And anyway, it's gotten into time. But the thing about it was there was a group of people that I got to play with and enjoy being around, and not one of them goes to church. Not a believer that I know of. And they were a fun group to play with. But it was a good group for me to be around. Because often we get involved and we get our relationships and our friendships with fellow believers. We're in church. We do things for our kids with fellow believers. And all of a sudden, if we're not careful, we have to think, where is that interaction on a regular basis, those relationships where we can interact with those who will not see eye to eye with us, who will not hold to the same things that we hold to? Do we have that opportunity? And every time I would leave to go play, Lindsay and then Lydia would repeat, go be salt and light. It was always an encouragement of purpose. Go be salt and light, Daddy. Okay. And I'm like, am I? I'm like, man, I'm ready to get back. And aside from physically needing to get back into shape, I'm ready to get back. Some of those relationships that I haven't had in this time period. And so that's something that I'm challenged at. We are moving. There's going to be new neighbors. Know for a fact there's neighbors who will not see eye to eye with where we are. It's a good opportunity. How am I going to be? Am I going to be salty? Am I going to highlight the greatness of Christ and give people a taste of who He is? But Jesus goes on with another illustration. Not just salt of the earth, but He says, you are the light of the world. In verse 14. And so we're not just to season the earth, but we are to light the world. He says, you are the light of the world. And He says, a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Gives a couple of illustrations here. First one is of a city. It says a city that is built on a hill, it can't be hidden. And the idea is that you are the light of the world, you shouldn't be hidden. This light shouldn't be hidden. If you take a city on a hill, back then, a lot of times they were whitewashed or from a limestone. They were whitish color. If it was on a hill, it was visible. Plus, just its elevation was something there. It made it for defense, harder to attack, something as you're having to attack going uphill. But also, it was more air conditioning, in a sense of breezes. There were a lot of practical reasons they would build one. But the underlying thing is that when it is up there, you see it. It can't be hidden. At night, the lights would shine, and anybody heading that way, needing to get there, they would be able to find it. Remember going to white sands. Anybody ever been to sand dunes before? If you go and you park your car, and these things are huge, 30, 40 feet up in the, and they shift as the wind through the course of the month and the days and years and whatever. Well, you park your car, and I remember we took these, skis that we waxed, and basically you go sledding down the sand dunes. And it was really fun. But you go up one, and all of a sudden, we'd slide down one, and we'd hop up. We thought we were going right back up where we were, but maybe we were just going a little off. We get to the top, and we look, and there's the car down there. We go down one, ended up going down another one, and on the other side, and then we got up to the top, and you can't tell where we came from. And there's a whole bunch, and the car could have been, we thought was right here. You can get lost real quick because it's down. The car was down. In a sense, like a city, if it's down in the valleys, you wouldn't know. But when you have a city or hill, it is visible. It is a point of mark. It is a point of reference. It provides a traveler with, that's where I'm heading. You see the city lights as you're driving from the country or coming to Dallas or whatever, you can see the glow. You know it's coming up. It can't be hidden. You know what's there, and it points to something. We are a city on a hill. We are a light. It cannot be hidden. We are not to be hidden. We are not meant to be hidden. Another thing he gives is a lamp. Takes it from the city, and then he brings it down into the household. It says, "Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house." If you were to put it under... Everybody's singing the song in your head right now, I know. This little light of mine, yeah. Put it under a bushel. No way. Yeah. It doesn't serve its purpose. Nobody does that. You light it, and it's to let all the light for everyone in the household to see. It is to be lit. It is not to be hidden. You are the light of the world, Jesus says. You are not to be hidden. You are to shine. Anybody think back to your childhood or have kids or grandkids that were afraid of the light? No. They're afraid of the dark. I remember the little things that get in your head, and it's good to remember that so that I can not just be overly rational with Lydia when she's scared. Like, there's nothing there, get over it. I remember the things I was scared about. And when I was a kid, this is back in the 70s, my parents would be gone, and my brother's spending the night or something, and let's say it was like, midnight, TV goes off, you get the national anthem and then the snow. It wasn't 24-hour news or sports or anything. And that was creepy in its own right, with that coming on the screen. And so it was like, all right, I'm time to go to bed. And I remember turning off the TV, and it was time to start turning out the lights, because that's what it's supposed to do, not burning electricity. Start at the back of the house, and I'd start working my way to the room, and I hit that last light. They left me about a 30-yard through the hallway sprint, dart to the right, and dive into my bed, under the pillow and under the sheets, because that last light that I hit, and then it was dark, that was scary. And I could turn on the light and go, there's nothing back there. There's nothing there. Even though our was pulled up a little bit and something could have been back there. That's what goes on your head. Nothing was there. But that light goes off, something's there, and I'm back, I'm gone. You're afraid of the dark. It's why the analogies of the darkness of the world, evil, the world is a dark place. It's a scary place. But we're not darkness. We are the light. Not only is that something safe and something good, because God is light, but we are to reflect, we are to highlight who He is in a dark world that is a scary world, that is a evil world. That light exposes things. It shines on things. It illumines things. Have you ever gone on a camp out and you were the one that forgot to bring the flashlight? And you had to mooch somebody else's or walk with them every time you're going somewhere in the dark. It's horrible. Light is valuable. It has its purpose. And our purpose there is to glorify God. Philippians 2 says, "Do all things without grumbling or disputing, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God, approach in the midst of a crooked and depraved and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world." Our society is dark. It's corrupt. We are lights. We can snuff out that light sometimes in this passage by complaining and grumbling. And there's other ways that other people might not see the light, and we're not reflecting who Christ really is, and we don't give them a glimpse of who He is as we light the world. But our goal, our challenge, He says, Let them know, give them a taste of who Christ is, and give them a glimpse of who he is. Our job in doing that. We are meant to glorify him. So just like salt highlights the food, we are to be light that glorifies Christ. You could say we're kind of like the moon. We don't provide our own light, but we reflect. And it's a beautiful thing, but it highlights the sun. You could say we're like stained glass windows. We sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But in the darkness, beauty is only seen when there's a light within. Within, that we reflect the light of the sun and that within when he's in our life, guiding us and steering us, and we are in obedience to him, and we are in the culture. We are in the world with that purpose, what he has called us to be. Not getting tainted by the world or drawn in, but our purpose is to be in the world. We are to make a difference. He says that to the disciples. You are salt. You are light. Give the world a taste and a glimpse of Christ.